All right.
Looks like we're live.
Looks like we're live, guys. We'll be getting started in just another minute here. Make sure everyone's in the room. All righty. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Novel Tree, I'd like to welcome everyone to the very first Heylo Higher Ed webinar featuring Lo Friesen. We couldn't be more excited about this partnership, and we're so grateful you all could join us. I hope you're all safe and sound tonight, and with your favorite Heylo strain in hand. I've got Seattle Summer for me waiting after this. Before handing it off to Lo, I'd like to mention a few things going on at the Novel Tree this week. This Sunday, we're running a 3-hour happy hour sale with 15% off the entire store. Everyone that's listening to this right now is the very first people to hear that. If you're a loyalty member of ours, you'll be getting a text on Saturday as a reminder. The second most exciting thing, actually the first, is we just received the first shipment of Treehouse branded vapes from the makers of Heylo, and we have a special offer that will be announced following Lo's presentation, so be sure to hang around for that. So I'd like to take a moment to introduce Lo and mention what's on the docket for our hour together tonight. We've been carrying Heylo products at the Novel Tree for years now. Their popularity speaks for itself. But some of the things we appreciate so much about Heylo are their responsible sourcing practices, industry-leading innovation, progressive community awareness, and a massive strain and blend selection. And it goes without saying that a big part of this is down to the brilliance of Heylo's founder, CEO, and chemist, Lo Friesen. Tonight, Lo will be giving a virtual tour of the Heylo headquarters and answering many of your submitted questions about the endocannabinoid system, minor cannabinoids, and CO2 processing. So in handing this over to Lo, I'll ask, what's been your favorite strain during the past couple months of shelter in place?
Thank you, Brock, for that epic introduction. What am I having these days? Well, I love the CBG blend. That is the ultimate pick-me-up when those days just feel like they're going slowly, or it feels like the world is facing a catastrophe, which it feels a lot of that these days with everything going on in the world, not only COVID, but also the ongoing racial tensions that we are experiencing. So CBG blend, while doesn't solve the problem, it certainly makes the problem feel a little bit less challenging in terms of, what we can do to solve things. And as an entrepreneur, we face challenges every minute of every day. And so I'm grateful to have the CBG blend. So awesome. That is my favorite. It has been for a long time, but yeah, so that's my go-to. But you really have a real treat there having Seattle Summer. I can't wait for that.
I know, I'm very excited.
Be released this summer.
All right.
So sneak hint, we are going to be releasing Seattle Summer again. That's unsolicited.
Very exciting.
Plug there, but anyway.
I'll hand it over to you then.
Thank you so much, Brock. I really appreciate you and the Novel Tree for being such an amazing partner the past few years. And to everybody joining us tonight, for taking the time on a Wednesday evening in the midst of chaos to hopefully ground yourself here and learn about your body and how cannabis can help you get more out of life, which is the Heylo mission. As a company built on education, we've had to find new ways to connect with our community. And this webinar is actually our first digital education session, so bear with us, but we're eager to hear your feedback. So please continue using the chat. I have, and you'll walk through those, but Chuck will be moderating the chat window and collecting questions for the presentation. We'll have a little Q&A. Thank you to everybody who submitted questions beforehand. I tried to work those in, but just compile those interactions and questions in the chat window. We're excited to get to know you all. So as Brock mentioned, something Heylo is really passionate about, our education and transparency and our sourcing. But above all that, it stems from our mission, which is to help you get more out of life with cannabis. And to do that, we make vape and topical cannabis products paired with a wealth of information so you can find the right product for your body and your needs, which can change day to day. So what we want to do is equip you with what you need to understand that day-to-day change and how your body responds to different cannabinoids and different terpenes. And today we're going to talk specifically about the ECS. So the title is the ECS and You. The endocannabinoid system is what makes up the ECS. So I am here. This is the overview of what we'll be talking about, which is most of questions that people have brought up in the past and just general basics on the endocannabinoid system. And if nothing else, we'll learn about our bodies and how plant medicine can interact with it. So what we have here is a receptor, and you can see the CB1 receptor. I'll use my mouse right here. Placed on a presynaptic neuron. And so what happens here is the endocannabinoid system is full of these receptors. And we've noticed here the CB1 receptor, that's one of the receptors that interacts with the cannabinoids, whether they're endocannabinoids or phytocannabinoids. And it is the most abundant cannabinoid receptor found in our brain. So we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly, but I wanted to touch on the fact that we only discovered the endocannabinoid system in 1998. And so we're still learning a lot about it. But we discovered it because scientists were trying to figure out how cannabis interacts with the human body. And so it's pretty interesting that when looking further, how cannabis interacts with our body, we discovered a whole new system within our body that's attributed to inflammatory response, digestive health, anxiety, appetite, so many things that we are able to know more about just by studying cannabis. And above all else, the endocannabinoid system puts our body into balance. So you'll hear the term homeostasis when you look up the endocannabinoid system or how cannabis affects our body. The ultimate responsibility is to bring the body into balance. So here, an example of that is that a chemical that the body releases called anandamide is being released through this receptor, and the CB1 receptor kind of takes note of how much anandamide is being released. And if it has just enough or too much anandamide, for example, the endocannabinoid system kicks into gear and actually tells the neurons to stop firing those signals and stop producing that chemical because our body has had enough. And so it's interesting because it actually back regulates. Normally the signals come from the presynaptic neuron, and they're actually going to come from the postsynaptic neuron to tell the body to kind of slow down. And that is where the bringing the body into balance comes into play. So what are the ECS receptors in the body? For a long time, we only knew of two, the CB1 and CB2 receptors. But since learning more about the endocannabinoid system, we have discovered that the endocannabinoids and interact with not only those two, but also the TRPV1 and TRPV2 receptors. And they've actually discovered a couple more. There's not a whole lot of information, so I didn't include those here, but we really are at the tip of the iceberg, not only in this industry, but also in understanding our bodies in this way. And so the most abundant receptor in our brain and central nervous system is the CB1 receptor. And this is predominantly found in the brain and the central nervous system, and is the receptor that most interacts with THC. And so what you can gather from this is that the THC will interact with the CB1 receptor and signal our body to experience that euphoria, the calmness that you may receive with THC, help with inflammation, and other effects that you'll get from THC. The second most dominant receptor in our bodies that interact with cannabinoids is the CB2 receptor. This is mainly found in the body and in the rest of the body and in the immune system. THC can slightly interact with the CB2 receptor, but CBD actually has a higher affinity for the CB2 receptor. And so we're still trying to figure out exactly the most abundant way the CBD molecule interacts with our body. But as far as we know, CB2 is the most attracted to the CBD molecule. Next, we have the TRPV1 receptor, which is a pain modulator. And so this is a most common interaction is capsaicin interaction, where capsaicin is what's mostly found in chili peppers, serrano peppers, any spicy peppers or herbs. And what happens is that capsaicin, which makes you have that burning sensation or makes it feel spicy, interacts with the TRPV1 receptor and signals to the body that like pain and burning sensation. And when the TRPV1 receptor gets excited and stimulated to a point where it's above a certain threshold, you actually start to feel less pain, and it actually becomes a pain reliever. And so we understand that the THC and CBD molecules and some other cannabinoids will interact with the TRPV1 receptor, and to a point where it actually produces a pain relief sensation. So that one's been an interesting one to follow. I think we're still learning more about it as well. And the TRPV2 receptor is very, very, very similar in identity to the TRPV1 receptor. However, it actually takes a lot more stimulation in order for the two to actually activate and do something. And so, for example, for capsaicin to interact and for you to feel sensation, you need to have a much higher dose of capsaicin, or even in being affected by temperature. So you have to be feeling extreme temperatures or extreme sensation in order for the TRPV2 to notify your body that something's going on. And so the TRPV2 receptor has been studied for modulating cell growth, because basically if your body is signaling that there's an excess of cell growth, the TRPV2 receptor will be activated and try to downregulate the production of those cells. So it's still being studied, for example, with cancer research, because this is a possibility for the ways that cannabis could also interact with the receptors to help, let's say that the TRPV2 receptor isn't activating when it should be. The cannabinoids could interact with the TRPV2 receptor or even the TRPV1 and support the immune system in that way and help downregulate cell growth. So I talked a little bit about where the endocannabinoid system receptors are in the body, but this diagram does a really good job of showing that the CB1 is mostly concentrated in your brain, while it is found in other locations in your body. And the CB2 receptors are mostly found everywhere else. So that is a really great diagram. And you can also see the presynaptic receptors and the neurotransmitters firing in relation to the activation of CBD or THC. So I've talked about endocannabinoids and phytocannabinoids. You can see in this diagram that they look relatively similar. So not exactly the same, but you can see THC there and CBD. And then that bottom left one, anandamide, and then the bottom right, 2-AG. Those are two of the most prominent endocannabinoids. So that means that our body naturally produces these chemicals. Anandamide is known for the euphoria feeling. Ananda actually means bliss. That's a root word for bliss. And so it makes sense that THC interacting with similar receptors and being a chemical that's similar to anandamide would give you that bliss or euphoria. Now, anandamide is produced when, for example, you're exercising and your endorphins are high. The body produces the anandamide chemical and it makes you feel good. Same thing when a woman gives birth to a baby, she's flooded with all these hormones and chemicals, and anandamide is one of those, giving you that blissful feeling after the birth of a baby. So you can see that the chemicals look pretty different when you look down to the actual structures between THC and the endocannabinoids. This is one of the reasons why the cannabinoids don't interact with the receptors. They're not a perfect fit. So it's like a puzzle piece. You can force a puzzle piece in, or it'll fit kind of, but it's not a perfect fit. So the endocannabinoids, those anandamide and 2-AG, they are a perfect fit with the receptors in our body. Whereas delta-9 THC or THCA, those are phytocannabinoids. The plant naturally produces those. And so those are interacting with our receptors, but they're not a perfect fit. I don't have a picture of it, but if anybody has ever heard of delta-11 THC, that is actually what our body, or our liver, converts delta-9 THC into. And that is actually has a higher affinity in our CB1 receptor. So it actually fits better. That delta-11 molecule fits better into the receptors than delta-9 THC. And so that's one of the reasons why a lot of people have a much stronger high from and stronger effect from an edible product or when you eat cannabis, because the delta-9 converts into that delta-11. And so it's not only a stronger experience because it's more bioavailable to you, but also it lasts longer. So it's really important to understand that difference, because when you switch from a vape, for example, or smoking, you're used to that experience. And then when you go to an edible, the common phrase is start low and go slow, because you don't know how much more affinity your body is going to have for that delta-11. And it could really result in a much more significant experience. So buyers beware. So phytocannabinoids, like I said, are the cannabinoids, THC, CBD, those other cannabinoids that the plant naturally produces. So what we have here on the left is a flowering cannabis plant. And you can see the hairs of the plant and the kind of crystal-y looking structure. Or when you look at your cured flower, when you purchase it from a store, you can see well, they're called trichomes, but they're bulbs and globs that are forming on the leaf surface, both within the bud and on the sugar leaf of the bud, along with the hairs. And what that part of the plant does is actually hold the resin. So the plant naturally produces the resin from the plant, and it holds into these glands that you can see on the right. That's a super magnified view of a cannabis leaf surface. So you can see that head, that's where all the resin is stored in the plant. And so with these glands all over the plant surface, the plant naturally produces those cannabinoids and terpenes in those glands and around those glands. And so that's why when you feel your bud, a lot of times it's sticky, or when you grind your cannabis, you'll catch the keef, which is basically a collection of trichomes. And so that's a very potent part of the cannabis plant, because that's where all the resin is stored. So this is where the plant produces its phytocannabinoids, which we end up consuming through various methods of administration. And here I just wanted to demonstrate that THCA versus THC. We do need to activate the THCA molecule with heat in order to convert it to THC. So you can see the, I'll put it on the screen here. What we're losing is this carboxyl group here. So when you heat it, whether that means you're burning the flower with a lighter or you're heating your vape to a certain temperature, what you're doing is you're exciting these electrons, and it's causing a CO2 molecule to escape. And what we're left with is this entire group coming off here. So you can see that it's gone. And what that does is it converts the THC into a molecule that the receptor is going to interact with and give you that high experience. So you can see THCA looks different. It's going to interact with the receptors differently. It does still interact with the receptor, but it creates a different signal. So you won't feel that high effect, but there are a lot of medical benefits to THCA. So there's a lot of studies, clinical research going on outside of the country, looking into those benefits, because when you're a medical patient and you don't necessarily have a tolerance for THC, it's hard to take the amount of dose that you need to take of THC for efficacy to occur on your symptoms or for cancer treatment, for example. So there are studies being done regarding THCA producing those that symptom relief or treatment without that high experience. So that medical versus recreational experience. Now, we do know that THC fits better into the receptor, and so it's actually going to be more effective, and you won't need as high of a dose as you would with THCA, but you're sacrificing that experience. So just good to see the different molecules there. So we talked about THC. We talked a little bit about CBD, which is more of that wellness molecule. The plant produces it naturally. It does not give you the psychotropic effect. It does not make you high, but it does help and affect your brain in a way that would help with anxiety and depression, with seizure treatment. And so that is, CBD did help put cannabis in a better perspective than it had been in the past. So while CBD isn't doing everything that we know the plant can do, it certainly helped us make progress within the country. So here we show the mechanisms for how the plant converts all these different chemicals into the various cannabinoids that end up being in the chemical profile of the plant. Now, all of these cannabinoids are produced based on the genetics of the plant for the most part. Naturally, they'll respond to the environment and express based on the environment, but it is inherent to the genetics of the plant that it would be able to produce a molecule like CBG or CBD or THCV, for example. So what you can see here is olivitolic acid. That is going to be that root molecule in the cannabis plant before it turns into the cannabinoids. So you can see right here, there's an enzyme that interacts with the olivitolic acid and converts it into CBGA. CBGA is the grandmother to the cannabinoids that we see on most of the products that we consume. So you can see here the main one being delta-9 THCA, and then it branches off here into CBDA and CBCA, and even THCVA. All of those come from the CBGA or CBGVA. And so we're still learning about these processes, but what we know is that enzymes are produced within the plant that dictate what cannabinoids get produced. The further the cannabis plant is along in its flowering process, the more of those cannabinoids get produced from the CBGA molecule. And so some companies are experimenting with CBGA in the flower and harvesting early. So if you're harvesting a little bit early, what that does is allows you to have more of that CBGA, but overall you're going to have a lower cannabinoid content. And got some guests here. But there are some strains that genetically produce more CBG at the end of the flowering process. And so what you'll see in the CBG blend are some of those strains, and Pink Lemonade is high in CBG. So what does CBG do? Why is it special? Well, it's actually, the jury is still out, but it's 10 to 100 times more potent or more effective than CBD for anxiety and depression. And so there's lots of studies being done on how we can help so many with anxiety and depression with lower doses. And we're able to see that really, really strong efficacy with CBG. So that's why the CBG blend is one of my favorites. It's just pure happiness. And it actually helps reduce or minimize the negative side effects of THC, which everybody is different. And so everybody's tolerance is different. So, I have a friend who feels THC from a 20-to-1 CBD to THC product. I love 1-to-1 products, 1-to-1 CBD to THC, but CBG actually allows me to have more THC and be able to handle more because it reduces the side effects like anxiety that THC can actually potentiate as opposed to relieve. So CBG, I highly recommend looking for those products. They're found in a lot of different flower, and we're able to see those on a lot of test results these days because as we learn more, people are looking for that information. I mentioned THCV or THCVA. A lot of studies are being done right now because it supposedly interacts with channels that affect insulin response, which directly applies to diabetes. So it's interesting to see the studies being done on how THCV in various doses can affect that insulin response. And it is also known to be an appetite suppressant. So again, there's still more research that needs to be done, but there's a lot of promise on the various cannabinoids. And in ancient times, the cannabinoids actually were balanced within the plant. So the flower would produce, let's say, equal amounts of THC, CBD, CBG, CBC. And over time, with growers selectively breeding for the effects that they wanted to achieve, we've ended up here in 2020 where flower potencies are well over 20% THC with little to no CBD and little to no of these other cannabinoids. And so what's happened is that over time, we've ended up with basically like a selective pool of cannabis strains. And so Heylo is always on the lookout for interesting strains. And that's why we came out with our various strains that have THCV in them. Chronic and Romulan was one of them from the old days. But keep an eye out. I've heard Colombian Gold in a variety of genetics has THCV. Durban Poison is known to have THCV. But it's on the non-medical side, THCV is actually known for helping and stimulating creativity. And so definitely keep an eye out for that for the creative times when you need to do a Heylo coloring sheet. And CBC is another minor cannabinoid. It's not as commonly seen, but we actually don't know a whole lot about it aside from its effect on inflammation. And so again, at the tip of the iceberg here, learning about the cannabinoids. CBN grew in popularity over the past couple of years, being known for its effect on our sleep. And some have claimed that CBN, even in small doses, has helped with basically not only helping with getting to sleep, but also sleeping through the night. And I would say that there's still a lot more to be done in terms of research, but all of the research is difficult to put forward because the federal government in the United States does not consider cannabis a legal plant. So there are tons of studies being done in Israel and in Europe. So I highly recommend taking a look at that to see what these cannabinoids can do, but we're still early on. I wanted to touch on the differences between all the different names you'll hear on the retail shelves and out and about cannabis extracts. So Heylo focuses on CO2 extraction, and that was for a number of reasons, mainly the safety of CO2 extraction and also the selectivity and versatility. So CO2 extraction allows us to really dial in our process and create a product that can be representative of what the plant produced. And so we've, over the past 3 years, refined our process to be able to maintain the terpene profile, make sure those flavors are there, and also the terpene profile actually will impact your experience. And so it's important that, let's say you tried the Aliens on Moonshine flower and you absolutely loved it, it gave you a certain experience. You want that same profile to be in the vape that you consume, because that chemistry of the profile and the cannabis plant needs to be similar in order to give you the same experience. And so our goal is to create an extract as close to the plant as possible so that you can get the experience that you expect and that we deliver. And so you can see the cannabis flower is where we start from. We only source really clean, organic method grower. Our growers are producing with organic methods, and we do test every single batch of oil that comes out of our machine so that we can be confident in the fact that it is pesticide free. Most of our products are sun grown, but we do work with growers that are either growing in greenhouse or hoop houses to produce year round, and they're growing sustainably. So all of these quality, sustainability, all plays a factor in our sourcing. Lastly, but most importantly, we're only sourcing really high quality flower, the bud from the plant. And that's because if you're going to be converting from smoking to vaping, and you want that experience, we need to start with something that you would actually smoke. So we need to not only start with the flower, but we also need to grind it up to make sure that we're getting the goodness from the inside of the bud. That's why you grind it before you smoke it. We grind it before we extract it as well. The next picture below, you can see unrefined extract. So that's our raw oil. This is through our CO2 process. This was fresh from a machine. It's that bright orange color. It smells amazing. And what we do from there is we actually further refine it, and that's based on viscosity. And so if the oil is too thick, it has too high of a viscosity, then we need to go through what's called a winterization process, or de-waxing. And what we do with that is we extract the waxes from the plant by using an organic ethanol. We mix the oil and the ethanol together, and then we put it in the freezer for about 24 hours. And what that does is it allows the waxes from the plant to harden, just like butter freezes in the freezer. And your oil alcohol mixture will stay liquid, just like your vodka doesn't freeze in the freezer. And so after that 24 hours, what we can do is we use, it kind of looks like pour over coffee. It's a filtration method where we pour our winterized oil into the filter, and the waxes will stay on top and the oil ethanol mixture will flow through the filter. And then we use a rotary evaporator to evaporate the ethanol from the extract, and we're left with our refined oil. Now, if we know we're going to be running our material for a long time, which oftentimes we do because we want to capture those rare cannabinoids, and a lot of times those rare cannabinoids come out at the end of the extraction. So we actually run our machine for much longer than most other processors in order to create that full spectrum profile. And so we will do a terpene fraction, for example, to preserve those terpenes and make sure that we're not burning them off after that long process. So we'll put everything back together if we needed to, and then we'll end up with our vape cartridge, which you can see that refined oil. It has those waxes removed. It's important to note that the more you process the product, the further away from the plant you get. And so Heylo is all about doing what we can to minimize our processing. And so that's why our process is called Raw X. We actually have metrics in place because every batch can be different, just like every flower is different. Every season of wine is different. So it's important to note that while we are based on chemistry, we are founded in our science, it also is understanding the variability of the plant. And so we respect that, and we cater our extraction to that plant. And so we have an HPLC in-house, and we will test the flower and make sure that we're extracting to the profile of that flower. A step beyond refined oil, we see distillate. That is that really clear, very high potency extract that you'll see commonly on the market. And that's a step further from even the refined oil. And what you're doing there is basically using very low vacuum and very high temperatures to essentially vaporize the cannabinoids and recollect them. And you're stripping it of everything else. And that's how you get those really high potency numbers. And then lastly, we have cannabinoid isolate. And you'll see a lot of like CBD isolate, THCA crystals, CBG isolate. And what that is we're getting as pure as possible to those acid compounds or the CBD compound, which in the purest form are a crystal, are a solid. And so again, we're even further from the plant and closer to a pharmaceutical. And so what all of that means is you need to understand what you're looking for in an experience in order to know what to purchase and what your body needs. At Heylo, we really are advocates for full spectrum because we believe in the entourage effect. The science shows that the more of those cannabinoids and the more of the terpenes that you have in the mix, it actually helps your body be able to process it and amplify the benefits of each other. The further you get away from the plant and the closer to those distillates and the isolates, you're getting more of that single compound, for example, THC. And sometimes that's overloading your body with that cannabinoid and can actually produce negative side effects like anxiety or over time, just overloading your endocannabinoid system. And so it's important to understand this so that you can buy the product that's right for you. And we did receive a question prior to the webinar specific to viscosity. Viscosity is basically how thick the oil is. And so, for example, honey has a very high viscosity, water has a very low viscosity. We actually measure the viscosity of the oil in-house because we have a range of viscosities that we know and are confident function with our hardware, like our 510 cartridges or our PAX pods, because we want to make sure that that oil is going to function in your product, whether it's wintertime or summertime. And so we actually test that product in-house and we know that range. We also go beyond that and we have a QA session where we will actually have consumers and our team be trying the product and making sure that it functions in the hardware, that the draw is there, that at various temperatures with your PAX era, for example, the product functions the way you want and ultimately delivers the experience that the Heylo, that is at or above the Heylo standard, which is beyond what the state requires. And so, yeah, we go through great lengths to make sure that the product is going to function and be an experience that we can be confident in. So here are some Heylo products here. I wanted to take a second after we talked about the entourage effect to discuss another question that came up about the lymphatic system and how cannabinoids interact, or if it interacts at all with our lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system actually is mostly made up of our immune system. And so cannabis absolutely affects our lymphatic system. In fact, it reduces our inflammatory response. And so depending on what you're looking for, that actually can be a really good thing. For example, for any inflammatory skin diseases like eczema or psoriasis, cannabis will actually suppress your inflammatory response and support your help reduce the symptoms of, for example, eczema or psoriasis. Also with inflammatory diseases in your gut, for example, or irritable bowel syndrome, the cannabis products that you ingest can really help with inflammation in your gut. And so there's a lot of ways that cannabis interacts with our immune system, mainly through our CB2 receptors. So CBD is known for the most interaction there, but all the cannabinoids and a lot of the terpenes do interact with our lymphatic system. So here you can see a few Heylo products. We do focus on those full spectrum products. We have topical products where we use the same oil that you would vape, we put in our topical products because the skin is your largest organ. And so it's important for those cannabinoids to interact with your skin. And so you can see I have some of my favorite products here in front of me. It's probably backwards, but I have my CBG blend here and my 707 Truth Band. And yeah, just really enjoying the entourage effect of these full spectrum cannabis products here. You can find our products in 510 carts and PAX pods. And lastly, I wanted to introduce Treehouse. We're breaking the rules a little bit here. And what we wanted to do was, in a time when so many people have lost their jobs or aren't able to spend as much money on cannabis products as they used to be able to, we know and understand that Heylo is a premium product and that everything we pour into the product, it requires that higher price point. And so for a long time, we've been working on developing this Treehouse product. And what we did was we produced all these different components in-house, starting with distillate, so high potency distillate. We have CO2 oil, full spectrum CO2 oil, and we have cannabis derived terpenes. And so you can see on the screen there, we have a sativa and indica product. I have some boxes here to show. These are only available in 1 grams. And as Brock mentioned, Novel Tree has them out on the shelves. Today was the launch date. So thank you guys all for joining me in celebrating this launch. But basically, we're trying to help you get more out of life with cannabis. And sometimes you need a little more punch with your cannabis products. And so these are those higher potencies. They have an amazing, really, really clean terpene profile, and just helping you make the summer a big hit, whether that's in your house or hopefully we're expanding into phase 2 soon and can enjoy each other's company. But nostalgia of getting to that, hidden smoke spot. If you're a parent, maybe it's your man cave in the garage. But in any case, it's a different way to experience distillate because we've added the CO2 extract in there. So I highly recommend giving it a try. Thank you guys. I just wanted to say that Heylo's here to help broaden your experience with cannabis. We go above and beyond to make cannabis more than just buying a product. We want you to enjoy the product with our Spotify playlist, to learn more about your body, to enjoy the events that we put on, whether they're fun, concert series or with the coloring sheets, but really taking that cannabis experience to the next level. So thank you for engaging with us. And I did want to mention that we also go above and beyond to make sure that our products are safe for you to consume. And I know that we're a little bit beyond the vape crisis, what happened last year, but at every point, Heylo was confident in the products we were putting out because we only put out products that we would feel comfortable consuming ourselves or recommending for our friends and family to consume. And that starts with sourcing. We only source from the growers that go through our rigid validation program. We test every single batch beyond what the state requires, including the cannabinoids, the terpenes, the pesticides. We heavy metals test our cartridges. We really demand the most out of our suppliers like PAX to come up with our MSDS sheets. And so there's just so much that we have to offer, and we're trying to push the limits to bring your experience to the highest level and make sure that you're confident in everything that you consume. So thank you for being here today to learn, and also for being a Heylo fan. I am not showing you the Heylo facility right now, but we wanted to share that you as viewers are going to receive the exclusive access with the sum up of the presentation today through email to our new Higher Ed series of videos, which will not only educate you on the endocannabinoid system in even more detail, but also show you exactly what the Heylo cannabis process is like. And if you're interested now, you can go on YouTube and look up the Heylo cannabis cannabis table. What we did was a take on chef's table and showed you the art and the science behind making a cannabis product, and it's just absolutely delightful. So thank you all, and I think I'll let Chuck take it away, and hopefully we can get some questions going through here.
Yes, thank you, Lo. It's amazing. I've been in this industry for 5 years, and I always continue to learn something new every day. And I have to say that I'm really excited to see just the continued research of all these different cannabinoids that we can find in the plant, and to see, which ones do what as far as, cancer research, and with the CBG blend, like the same thing of just being in that really great mood. So again, thank you for all of that. And we have a question from Bruce Newman, and his question is, are CBD and the minor cannabinoids activated in the same process as THCA as it converts to THC when burned?
Yes, great question. Most of them are, all of the acids are activated by heat, and all of the compounds that the plant produces are those acid forms. And so while they all are activated with heat, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all decarboxylated or activated through the same temperatures. They're actually at various temperatures. And so I don't have those off the top of my head, but a lot of them are very close in temperature. And so highly recommend looking into that. But yeah, they all are decarboxylated or activated through heat. I don't know the major differences between the acid forms and the activated forms and how they interact with your body for those minor cannabinoids. I think we're still learning about how CBGA interacts differently with CBG, but we know that CBD and CBDA also don't have much of a difference in their activity. THC, though, has a huge difference in the experience from THCA versus THC. So heat definitely changes the chemical, but I don't know what those temperatures are, and I don't know exactly how the acids versus the activated interact with your body differently for those minor cannabinoids. Hopefully we'll learn soon, and I will try and find out. My email is here, so if you guys do want to follow up with me, please do email me. I love hearing from you guys, and it really challenges me to dig into the research. So.
Perfect. Thank you. So we, as mentioned before, we do have that special sale for Treehouse products, and it is a 20% coupon that we will be issuing to you guys through email. You'll be able to redeem that at Tree, and we'll get that out. And I also want to say that we're very, very proud of our transparency and our education. And as things progress and we get through these different phases of reopening, I want to say that we actually do have a public tour that is available that you can go to our Heylo website and sign up for. So again, once we open up more and more and make that available, I would love to see more of you to come and check out the facility and see how we do it and how we're different from everybody else. So that is everything that I have. We are wrapped up. Lo, do you have anything else, Brock?
No, I think that's it. Thank you all for joining, and hopefully there was some added value there. And keep an eye out for more of these. Like I said, this is the first one, and please send us feedback so that we can get better and help spread the word.
Thank you so much, Lo. Thank you so much, Chuck. Everyone keep an eye out for that QR code in your email. It's now on the menu at the Novel Tree, so you can stop by anytime between now and Saturday to redeem that discount. And we know you'll enjoy it. Thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.